Okay, folks. Heather and I figured we'd have a chat because nothing much is happening. So maybe there'd be something to chat about. I don't know. Hey,
Hey,
Heather.
Joanne. Why are you calling? Is anything going on?
Well,
How are you?
I'm okay. We're having a coup. How are you?
Oh man, I've missed you.
I know.
Hey, listen, Buddy. Buddy told me this morning that a year ago, you and Buddy and I were at the Algonquin Hotel in New York City, and that's where he had his first Manhattan ever. So it was an important day in Buddy Poland
I
history.
I did not realize that was his first, and
Yes,
what a place to have
but
it. That
not
was.
his last, I have to say.
I wasn't going to say that.
um we got I mean, so we
Here we are.
yeah, well, again, there's a lot going on, but I think it would be really helpful to spell out to people why this is a coup.
Well,
Because I was shocked today that the legacy media, and I'm not going to call out which particular newspapers, but they're acting like this is a normal transition. And
right.
do you want to take this away about what's going on?
Well, I mean, I'll say the most basic. We can go from there. Um, there's a private citizen who was not elected to any office, who is a random wealthy individual who is influential because the person elected president likes him, who apparently has full access to a number of different federal databases, and we don't know what it is that he's doing with them. Now, so first of all, our private information is, I mean, I hate to put it this way, is some rando who's wealthy has access to it. Why? Why are we giving government power to a random individual with seemingly no bounds on his power? Because ironically, he's not elected.
I mean, one of the things I think is really interesting is the way that people like Elon Musk and Trump at this point, and many of Trump's people are operating in sort of a gray zone. They're not looking to get permission; they're simply smashing
Well,
everything.
and
And the thing that really jumps out, somebody was saying to me, "Well, I like what Musk is doing," and I'm like, "Our Congress makes the laws." And the president can sign those laws or veto them, in which case the Congress has to rewrite them or accept the veto or pass it over the president's veto. But Musk is in there just line item deciding what he
right,
thinks we should fund and what we shouldn't. And he doesn't have security clearances. He doesn't have anything.
no, and so along the lines of what you just said, that there's a gray zone, I was thinking about this morning. If Trump did this, it would not be a gray zone. I mean, he might have immunity because what the hell? But apart from that
Yeah,
point,
he shouldn't have immunity.
he
She's
should not.
referring to the Supreme Court here.
Exactly, the Supreme Court hearing. He wouldn't or shouldn't. But at any rate, if he did it, this wouldn't be a gray zone. So Musk is really handy because he's doing whatever the hell it is he wants and possibly what Trump wants. But although in any person's mind who understands how our government works, it's not a gray zone, ironically, because he isn't a government employee, because he isn't bound in by any set of rules, he is doing what he wants. And it may seem like a gray zone, but it's pretty black and white that what he's doing is wrong. But I don't know, to me, the ultimate irony is we live in an age when we've watched norms get violated left and right and all over the place. And I guess, and it's dangerous to say this as a historian, I didn't imagine that the way into this kind of coup would be someone who is not violating any norms, is just, as I said before, a random civilian doing things and doing things without, I mean, we saw some pushback today, but it sure as heck feels like, you tell me, there isn't a lot of press coverage of this, is there? I mean, are people responding as though this is Is there any indication other than you and I looking at each other here that anyone sees this as insane that as it is?
Well, actually, I think that's quite interesting. I think the independent press does, and I think people on the street do. I think it's interesting that the legacy media is acting as if this is normal transition, and it's simply not. It is worth pointing out in terms of there being ways that this could be done within, not in a gray zone. Is Congress has a majority in the House and the Senate. If they want, and they have the White House, if they wanted to get rid of U.S. aid, for example, they could do it, except for the fact that they couldn't get the votes because even Republican congressmen know this is a bad idea. So this is minority rule by the man who essentially bought Trump the presidency.
That's the thing.
And to me, when we talk about a gray zone, we're really talking about something that is, I mean, not even just unconstitutional. They're operating in a sort of pre-constitution world. Like it's very hard to chase them down because they're just doing it by
It's
fiat.
out of
It's
government.
outside, it's out of
Well,
constitution.
right.
It's something else.
So the president's not doing this. Congress isn't doing this, right? So they can both sit back, be like, well, it's not up to us, right? We're not doing this. He's doing this. So it is a gray zone, but you're right. It's outside, in a sense, outside the bounds of the functional structure of the government constitution, right? He's operating in some sphere outside of things. And I don't know. I mean, I'm really glad we're doing this because I'm a little bit speechless at this, at what we're seeing. I'm, as with so many things in our time, I'm a little bit speechless at the fact that we're seeing it with some pushback, but not very much. I mean, we started out jokingly saying, we're in a coup, how are you? But, if you think about a private individual taking over government power with seemingly no limit on his power, getting access to documents, confidential information, the Treasury funds. I mean, we could sit here and debate how you define a coup, but it's hard to think of more that we need to pile on other than an individual taking over power with no right to have that power and superseding Congress and the president.
Yeah, yeah. So I totally agree with you, and I'm not only shocked at the people who say, "Well, I like what he's doing," who tend to be extreme MAGAs, the number of people who don't know what's happening because the legacy media isn't covering it, but also I am shocked that, not shocked because nothing shocks me any longer, but surprised that Republican Congress people are not pushing back on this. Because if Trump or Musk, because honestly, I don't think Trump really knows what's going on. I think you can tell that he's really slipping mentally, and Musk is really doing this. But if Musk doesn't need Congress to do any of this, i- what is Congress but a place where you get to sit in that nice chamber? I mean, they're not even an advisory body at this point.
Well, and
He's just doing what he wants. And
absolutely,
his six guys, his six
young
young
men.
men from 19 to 24.
Absolutely. But here's the thing, and I know they know this, but I feel like it needs to be said anyway. Any member of Congress, particularly Republican, who is watching this happen and not speaking up is taking part in it.
Right.
They are not doing their job. They are allowing this to happen, and whether it's because they like Trump and agree with him or think this is good or whatever, they may think that they're hiding. They may think that, well, it's not us, it's Musk, and maybe it's Trump, and what can we do? By not doing something, they are acting. They are taking a course of action, and they are responsible for that.
Well, to push it a little further, the stuff that Musk says he is cutting, of course, we don't. This is all stuff he's saying. Um, it really badly hurts Republican areas. So by going after the Lutheran Social Services, that's a major employer in South Dakota. This today, rural.gov was gone. Rural broadband, he says he's gotten rid of. The things that he is hitting are things that will hurt constituents. And the thing that really jumps out to me is it feels to me as if Republicans, and one has actually said this to me, that they don't dare to speak up because Trump will take revenge on their constituents. You know, that's a nice military installation you've got there. It's a pity we didn't find any money to support it. Um, but he's going to do it anyway.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
Well, that's
you have to know he's gonna do it anyway.
exactly. And it's like we've been watching this throughout the first term. You can't interact with Trump and get away unscathed in some way. During the pandemic, he was taking this kind of action, threatening blue states because they didn't like him. So, yeah, I mean, well, you want to know how fundamental government transitions happen. And they happen when the people who have government power don't act or are afraid to act because a person who has power is more focused on revenge than on governing.
Yes,
And
except not really revenge, because revenge suggests something was done to him.
oh, well, that's true.
What what was happened was people tried to hold him accountable to the law,
Right.
and now he's not clearly not accountable to the law, and he's got this guy in power who's absolutely not accountable to a constituency, to anybody, except, you know, for whomever he is working, which seems at least partly for his own bottom line. That's a deep dive we can do another day, but you know, his destruction of US aid plays right into the hands of Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. It just does. And which is one of the reasons they wouldn't be able to do it if they tried to do it through Congress. But I have a question for you. In the minutes we have left, the reason that I brought up that this seemed to me to be outside the Constitution is that because of our Constitution, we have very clear ways that we act when things go haywire. We're not in the Constitution right now. So it made me think about the American Revolution. Before there was a Constitution, how did people then not just push back? To me, what really is at stake here is so many people don't understand what's going on. How do we make sure people know what's going on and then be able to push back?
Absolutely. And so, it's funny because I guess it's not like surprise. I've been thinking of the revolution too. At the time, whatever the rebels or patriots were doing, was called the government out of doors, meaning whatever they were doing, it wasn't the government. It was out of doors. It was bad. It was illicit. But the difference between what the revolutionaries were doing and what we see now is that they were absolutely focused on engaging the public. They had town meetings. They asked for people to vote on and express their views about independence. There were declarations of independence passed by towns throughout, among other places, Massachusetts, because they just asked townspeople, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? There was an assumption that through newspapers, through conversation, through real assertion, through actually controlling information coming out that was coming from the other side, the focus, and always was, and the same is true for the Constitution, the focus was always on having the people buy in. And by that, not by enticing them or bribing them, but by operating along the lines of what the people knew and wanted. Now, we can talk also in another conversation on what people, because that's a big conversation, but still, the revolutionaries and the framers of the Constitution, fundamental to what they were doing was their understanding of the fact that the people, whatever they were going to do, was going to be grounded on the people. And that's, we've talked about this before, that one of the distinctive things about the Constitution that arose out of this era is that it's grounded on the people to an extreme degree. Monarchies don't care so much about the people. What Americans at the time thought that they were doing that was different was creating a government in which public opinion ruled. They didn't know who the public was. They had very small ideas of who counted as the public. They weren't quite sure how to get their point of view, but they did believe that more than eight guys in a room mattered, that public opinion mattered. And that was how they proceeded. So right now, we don't know, people don't know what's going on, and they may or may not even have opinions. And we're sitting here talking about something that's beyond serious.
So how do we do this? Like, do we hold
Tim,
Instagrams?
damn good question. Well, Instagram is, I suppose, one means. I mean, what do we do? How do we do this other than talking about it and getting others to talk about it? What do we do?
No. I was asking you.
I know, but now I'm asking you.
Well, so I think that's, I mean, to me, that's the answer is the thing that of kind of has my hair on fire, of course, is we've been seeing this trend toward monarchy or authoritarianism really in our era since the 1980s. I mean, you could see it happening. And when you tried to tell people, they were all like, oh, yeah, right, you're some crazy lefty. And I got to tell you, if there's one thing that I am not, it's a crazy lefty. But the thing about this moment is it's not just something like a signing statement under George W. Bush. In this case, we have an unelected billionaire, the richest man in the world, who put $290 million into getting a man who appears to be a puppet elected, and now he is dictating our government. And crucially, he has stolen the private information of the US Treasury and anybody who had any truck with the US Treasury. And that's not a partisan position to say, did you think you were electing a billionaire to be able to oversee your tax returns, your Social Security, your Medicaid, your education, which is what he's into tonight. And that may be enough to make people who aren't otherwise engaged realize that they must pay attention, because until the Republicans get on board to say this is a really bad idea, we're not really any place different than where we were, not least because one of the things that the MAGA Republicans have set out to do is to cut back on voting even more. So even though we know the majority in America did not want Donald Trump, he didn't win a majority of the popular vote. More people voted for somebody else than voted for him. Um, it's going to stay the same unless people really do what they did over the Stamp Act or over the tea monopoly and say, listen, I think my neighbor is a lunatic, but I'd rather team up with my neighbor who is trying to drink coffee over there than line up with the monarchists. And maybe this will do it.
And maybe so. I mean, I do think, and I know it's very common to say, Republicans don't matter, it's a cult, they're not going to care. But the fact of the matter is, um, there's not, in the same way that there's not a big blob of, crazy lefties, there's not a big blob of MAGA people. There are many, but there are many people who are Republican. And as we were just saying a minute ago, don't know what's going on, don't know what's being jeopardized. So some of what has to happen now is that some Republicans need to speak up. Not, and I'm not talking, I mean, it'd be not nice if Republican congressmen spoke up, but I mean, if Republicans who are uneasy about what's happening called their members of Congress and griped, because the fact of the matter is, in the end, what we have are people in power who want to stay in power, regardless of their party. And the way that you can ultimately get people to listen is if you seem to represent public opinion, if you seem to represent the will of the public. And I think that matters for the left as well as the right. This isn't a solution to the problem, but
Well, and I let me point out once again that the vast majority of Americans are not on the left or the right. They're there in the middle. They're the liberals. And you could be a Republican liberal, you
precisely
could be a
my point.
Democratic liberal, but we need to all be speaking together on this.
That's precisely my point. And so don't, a lot of times people will respond to me and say, but my member of Congress, it's a red state, it's a Republican, they'll never listen to me. It's not the listening that matters. It's the call that matters. It's the number of people pressing and calling. Doesn't matter if you think they're going to listen, but if there's a swell of response, it matters. We just saw with the OP, with federal funding, we just saw an attempt to freeze all funding and a huge to do about it, and at least some backpedaling. And that's partly because of the response.
Right. And what they did instead was had Musk do it.
Well, exactly. So that's what we're watching now. So to go back to, is this a coup? It's a coup because in a sense, it's people in government standing back and allowing someone outside of government to do the things that they don't want to do, they don't dare to do, they don't think should happen, but they're not going to do anything about it. So, yeah, I mean, I know it's easy for you and I to sit here and say, call your member of Congress, stand up. But speaking out loudly in mass numbers, calling matters, and speaking out matters. And as I said a moment ago, calling matters not because you think you're going to individually persuade someone, but because mass numbers of people objecting means these people don't have power behind them and they could lose it. And that matters.
You know, I'm not going to add a single thing to that. That was absolutely beautiful. So I am gonna. I think we've gone on long enough. I'm gonna go home and see if Buddy's found his way into a Manhattan, and and then I'm gonna write tonight. But I think we probably ought to make. I know you have an announcement. I'm looking at you, looking over your shoulder, but you don't have to make it now. We can do it another
Well, I'm
time.
going to do it now because he's been singing the whole time.
Okay, go ahead.
It's the
She.
first. It's true, she. So I got a new rescue parakeet found in Central Park, and she has been singing throughout this entire conversation the first time. The
Oh,
first.
oh,
So
that's
I just
great.
wanted to say she is on the side of the angels.
Perfect. Angel. Maybe she. Maybe that's the name.
Maybe it could be. I'm going to consider it.
And my announcement is that I have got a good enough. We've upgraded the cable coming into this building, so it looks
No
like
more
we can.
carpet magic.
Oh, oh, come on! I'll go up there next summer. So it looks like we can do these more often because this appears anyway to have worked,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
huge from my end because every time we tried to do these, I had to drive 25 minutes and then sit in a parking lot somewhere and then drive 25 minutes home. So this makes it a lot easier.
So we will be doing more of this. It's not as though there's nothing to talk about, and maybe it'll be orchestrated by New Burb over here.
Perfect.
Okay.
Good to see you, Joanne.
Good to
Love
see you
you.
too. Love you too.
Bye.